for this recipe you will need 190 grams of plain flour, 200 grams of caster sugar or whatever sugar you have in the cupboard. You'll also need 30 grams of cocoa powder, half a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda and a teaspoon of baking powder. You'll also need a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. 120 ml of sunflower or vegetable oil, 240 ml of hot water that's just come off the boil, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a tablespoon of lemon juice. If you don't have lemon juice, use white wine vinegar. So line a tin, 8-inch round. This one's a spring tin, so it's easy to take the cake out. You'll also need a whisk, a rubber spatula if you've got one, and a nice big mixing bowl. First thing to do is to take all the dry ingredients, so flour first, into the bowl. And then your sugar. We're also going to add in the cocoa powder. The bicarb of soda and the baking powder. And finally the quarter of a teaspoon of salt. And then using the whisk, we're just going to mix all these together until completely incorporated. And we'll speed this bit up. As you can see, it's all mixed together, so we're going to add in our vanilla extract. Using the spatula just to get it all out of the pot. And then we're also going to add in our oil and give this a bit of a mix. The mix will begin to come quite clumpy and get stuck in the whisk, but don't worry about that. Once we add the water later on, that will sort itself out. And now we will add our tablespoon of lemon juice. And again, we'll give this a bit of a mix. As you can see, the mix is now becoming really quite clumpy in the whisk, so we just need to add in our water. 240 ml of water that's come off of the boil, so not too hot. And slowly start giving that a mix in. If you go full whack, it'll be all over your worktop. So just gradually mixing it into the clumpy mix, it'll start to melt away from your whisk. Just slowly incorporating it in. As you can see, it is becoming to come together nicely. As I speed up and it becomes a silky smooth batter ready for the cake tin. Give it a really good mix, make sure it's all incorporated and silky smooth. That way we'll get as much air in it as we can. Now get your lined cake tin and pour the mix in. Make sure to scrape out as much of the mix from the bowl as you can. Try not to waste any. This is now ready for the oven to bake at 170 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. To check if the cake is cooked, pop a skewer through the middle and make sure that it comes out clean with no wet mixture on the end of the skewer. As the cake is cooling, we can make the icing. So I've got 75 grams of dark chocolate and 75 grams of milk chocolate. If you want to make this completely vegan, use just dark chocolate. We then pour 75 ml of hot water from the kettle and give it a whisk straight away as we begin to melt the chocolate down. If it starts to look grainy, don't worry, that's just part of the melting process. After a few seconds of mixing, you can see that the chocolate is melting and it's going into a glossy mixture. This now needs to be left at room temperature to thicken into a spreadable consistency. Once the icing has thickened like this, we can now start decorating our cake. Spoon the chocolate icing onto the top of the cake and gradually spread it over the cake, nice and even, as much or as little as you like. And you can use anything to decorate the cake. I've got some leftover chopped up mini eggs that I'll be using, but you could use anything like sprinkles or grated chocolate or anything that you can find in the cupboard. Now that I've covered the cake with the icing, I'm just going to sprinkle my crushed mini eggs on the top. What's great about this recipe is not only is it super easy, it's got a lot of flexibility to it as well, so you can decorate it how you like to. If you don't like dark chocolate, you can just use milk chocolate to make the ganache, and the cake is actually vegan, so if you were to just use dark chocolate for the ganache, the entire cake would be vegan too, so that's really, really good. So that brings us to the end of this video. If you've enjoyed it, please like and subscribe below. And if you decide to try this recipe for yourself, please tag me in the pictures, as I'd love to see how you got on.